Hi, I'm Kristan Higgins, author of Now That You Mention It, and you're watching Lit with Love on Author's Voice.
Hi everyone, and welcome to Lit with Love. This is Author's Voice, where we connect authors to the world. I'm still new at that new tagline, but we connect authors to the world. So hi everyone, this is Lit with Love, and I'm your host, Sonali Dev, who always messes up the intro. And today we're talking to my dear friend, my idol, my mentor, and my guru, Kristan Higgins. Welcome, Kristan.
Thank you, Sonali.
And we're going to be discussing Kristan's new book, Now That You Mention It, from HQN, and it is $15.99. So thank you, HQN. They asked me to thank the publisher for sending Kristan to us. And welcome, Kristan. If you're watching live, remember that there's a button beneath the screen that you can click to send us questions live, and also, of course, to buy the book. And please buy the book. Kristan will sign it for you. And I think this is also our first time being on Facebook Live. So welcome if you're on Facebook, and you know the drill, where you can just like us and send us questions. So welcome, and we will get started.
All right.
For the third time, welcome, Kristan. And needless to say, this book it just hit the USA Today bestseller list, and it is absolutely fabulous. Every time Kristan comes out with a new book, I feel like she can't possibly top this one. You know, because there's at some point you have to start flattening out. Actually, don't. But what you will hear over and over again is this is her best one yet. This is her best one yet, and definitely in many, many ways, this is your best one yet. And we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to let you tell our viewers about the book, but before I do that, I'm going to say that I feel like a really good book is almost therapy. Where you get to kind of pull out old wounds and look at them in retrospect, where it becomes a little bit easier to heal them. And I think all your books are that, but this one especially was that for me. Thank you so much for writing it. And let's tell our viewers where it came from and a little more about it.
Well, this is the story of Nora Stewart, who is a doctor in Boston, living her best life, and she has left behind the small island town of Scupper Island, Maine, where she was a classically miserable teenager, cursed and blessed with this beautiful younger sister. Difficult family life in that once upon a time they were so happy. Her dad was this doting, wonderful father, and then he left, and Nora's life kind of went downhill from there. So at 18, she wins a scholarship to Tufts University. She leaves the island and never looks back. And she kind of reinvents herself, which is something that I love to write about. And she becomes a doctor, and she has a fabulous apartment, and she's dating this wonderful guy. And then there are a couple of things that happen to her that make her kind of question this new life, if it's sustainable, if it's as real as she felt it was. So in the opening chapter, she gets hit by a pest control van in Boston, a land of terrifying drivers, and she gets knocked unconscious, and she thinks for a few minutes that perhaps she's dying. And she has these thoughts about, now, you know, what am I going to do now that I'm dead? My dog will never get over this. I'll never meet Daniel Radcliffe. She's a huge Harry Potter fan. And all of a sudden she wants to go home again after 16, 17 years of not being home, and make amends with her sister, to whom she no longer speaks, get to know her teenage niece who's staying on Scupper Island for the summer, become closer to her mom, and find out what happened to her dad. So that's the book in a nutshell.
And it's so Kristen's I think USP, that's the, Kristen's hallmark is vulnerability to me as a reader. I don't think I've read another author in any genre who is able to crack open characters as well as you can and really get to the bottom of who they are and their wounds. It's really, I mean, the only word that could really describe it is your characters are insanely vulnerable. Like they're just these wide open, and I think the experience of getting inside them because of that is just something else in terms of how real they become. So I think I can't even imagine what you go through when you're creating those wounds. and so I want you to talk a little bit about that process, because this book epitomizes that, right? I mean, it's all of these very tangible wounds that we're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that every person has those wounds, to some, to a wide degree, whether you have had terrible, wrenching traumas or you were the last kid picked for gym. I think in so many ways, those are the things that define us. Those are the things that we climb out of to become adults. We redefine ourselves, or we say, I'm not that person, or you wallow around and you get stuck being the boring sister, or the ugly daughter, or the smartest kid, and whatever it is. And to me, that's what these, I think all my books are about, the characters' vulnerability and how they've built strength out of that. Out of their worst hurts comes their strength. So Nora suffers, yes. I think that's something we have in common. We like to put our characters through the ringer. But because of that, she can become this amazing person. She has not let her past define her. She has defined herself. And everything about her is very authentic. Her optimism, her honesty about her past, her image of herself, her family. She's a really smart person, and she's really determined to create a life that is meaningful. She's a doctor. She cares about people, and she couldn't have done that without having been the person that she was.
Yeah, it's all very hard won. So it's and so again, growth arc wise, that becomes really complicated because she knows upfront how hard she's worked.
Yes.
And yet you go home and boom, all of this is
Right.
just, all the stuff I thought I had put away is out here in the open again. And she knows that's going to happen because she's
Right.
that smart.
Right.
And I think that another interesting thing to me was, because you deal with wounds, you have to deal with forgiveness, right? Because all of the healing of those wounds comes from forgiving yourself, forgiving
Right,
people around you,
right.
and all of that. And so you deal with unforgivables, and I think that opener, which is absolutely brilliant, because I mean, the first note I wrote down reading this book was, only Kristan could make death funny. Because she's like, okay, I'm dead, and now, and she has this really funny inner dialogue, and death's funny.
Well,
there's another part in the book that you make death funny, and we'll talk about that later.
I think in most situations in life, there's the serious part, and then there's that inner voice narrating the brutally honest thoughts that you have. She's hit by a car, she's lying in the street, she's passing out, and she's thinking, should I get a new dress for my funeral? I wish I had bought that Kate Spade dress, or how she always thought she would meet Daniel Radcliffe, or what music will be played at the wake. She doesn't want the corny, cheesy music. She wants, U2 and Ed Sheeran. And so I think those are two parts of the same emotion, and it's a very human quality to try to, your mind goes crazy. There's so many thoughts in an instant like that, and some of them are funny. And even in one of the more difficult scenes to read in the book, I tried to think about, you can't sustain one emotion and only one emotion for very long before other thoughts and emotions come in. And so I tried to weave those in to really create a tapestry of an experience for her. Good, bad, terrifying, funny, heartfelt,
I'm so glad you said that, because another thing I was thinking about is the humor itself is often based in pathos in your books.
Yes.
Like there's this sad, like pain underlying the humor, and it's still so funny. And I think that just adds such texture, right? Like when she's dying and she's having these funny thoughts, you throw in a boyfriend twirling another woman's hair. So I was talking about unforgivables, and talk about unforgivable.
Right. Right.
That's and yet for a while at the beginning of the book you make him someone we wonder, is she going to redeem this guy? Because if somebody twirled someone's hair if my husband twirled someone's hair when I was dying,
That's, you don't come back from that very easily.
Yes, and yet for a few moments,
Right.
I did feel like, oh, maybe she's going to redeem Bobbi.
Well, again, that duality of humans. Bobby is a jerk of a boyfriend in that moment, but he's been really wonderful at other times. And when their relationship started off, they were on more level footing. Now she's unconscious, she's on pain medications, she thinks she's floating into the next world, and she hears Bobby flirting with this other resident and playing with her hair when she opens her eyes. So I love that Bobby is such a jerk at that moment, and yet he's not just a cardboard cutout either. You don't want to have the idiot boyfriend, because then what does it say about Nora that she dated him for a year?
He's a boyfriend with shades of idiot, and
Yeah.
pretty strong shades of idiot.
They show up more and more towards the end
as
of the relationship.
And so that jumps straight into the other thing that I think your books are so much about. They're about relationships between women.
Yes.
So women, and this one I think had an overt element of that a little bit, and I love what you do with her, Laura, who's Bobby's.
Gloria.
Gloria, sorry. No. So what? There's actually a moment where she says to Gloria, "Don't be that woman."
Yes.
And there's this whole thing which I have like personal anger about, how society tells you all the time, oh, women are awful to each other, and really they're not. And then when this happens, something like this happens, just knowing that you don't have to be that person, and she says that, and it changes Gloria, right?
Yeah, I love writing about female friendship and female relationships, and there are so many great women in this book. But we don't all have these perfect friendships. Most friendships aren't perfect, and although ours is, I have to say, no, it is perfect. But Nora has this sister who was once her best friend, this mother that she admires but can't get close to, and yet she has such respect for her mother. She's got her friend from medical school, her friend from high school, and then Gloria, her co-worker. And I think, it's wonderful when women come together and lift each other up, and I certainly try to do that as an author and through my books too. And yet I'm also fascinated by female friendships, because they do go wrong so often, and we're kind of left stunned in this idea that, but we're friends, we're girlfriends, we're women who are friends. We have to be better than that, and there's all these books about getting over a man or being in a positive relationship with a man, but they don't do anything for women friendships. This is a how to vet the new friend that you just made. We tend to just fall into a friendship and say, like, oh, I really hit it off with her, I love her, we're going to be friends till the grave, and so I like exploring all aspects of that.
And in this one particularly, they're both really lovely women, which brings us to that whole perfectly good people do bad things, and I think that happens a lot in your books too. I mean, it's and with her, and this was one place where that thread never closes, and I was wondering, what happens between Gloria and Bobbi. Do you know?
I like to think, I'd like to think that people can change for the better, and I think I understood the character of Bobby pretty well, to know that he loved to be needed, he loved to be important. He's an emergency room doctor, so he gets to save the day every hour, right? and and I like to think that the love of the right woman would bring him a little humility, a little more gratitude, appreciation. So I see Gloria as that woman.
Yeah, I see it too. I mean, she does a crummy thing, but I see it, and I like how he falls in line. But he was pretty nice with Nora too at one point.
Yes.
So there's that whole. But it's
Yeah.
So that and then my favorite character in the book, whose name
Sullivan.
well,
No, not Sullivan. Shawan.
yes, Sullivan too, and that brings me to a question, because I should take questions. We're getting questions in, and everyone, please keep sending more. I have a question from Katie Taylor, and she's on Facebook. Hi, Katie, and she loved the book, of course.
Thank you, Katie.
And she wants to know what your inspiration for Sully was.
Oh, well, looks-wise, actor Luke Evans, right? I know, he's so beautiful. But in terms of character, he's a twin, and his brother Luke is the bad guy in the story in many respects. He was Nora's academic competition in school and the golden boy of town, and everyone thinks every year on this little fictional island, the kid with the highest GPA gets a full ride to Tufts, courtesy of Dr. Perez, a Tufts graduate. And Luke and Nora are neck and neck for it, and Nora gets it, much to the shock of everyone. And Luke is a real bastard. He turns on Nora, and of course she loves him. He's beautiful, he's golden, everyone loves him. And she's this, awkward teenager. And Sully is the other brother, the not so athletic, not so handsome, quieter guy. And there's a little sign in the book that he is the hero. Nora, who had, her body just explodes in puberty, as happens to so many of us. She gains a lot of weight, her skin breaks out, she's got terrible hair, she's got plantar's warts. I mean, she says the plagues of Egypt visit her. And so she just feels incredibly unattractive. She's got this beautiful sister and this love for Luke. And then she goes away, and she comes back all these years later, a changed woman. She's stylish, she's controlled her hair, she knows how to dress, she's become healthier, and so many people don't recognize her, but Sully does. He just walks into the bakery and says, "Hi, Nora, I heard you were back," And I think that's a little sign of he's always seen her. Doesn't matter what she looks like.
And that whole thing about being seen, right? And her whole, her entire teenage experience is about not being seen.
Yes. Yeah.
Because her inner dialogue and the way she looks does not match at all. I mean, she has pain on the inside too, but just the judgment of it, and how, I think that's the whole thing, that they see each other. And I mean, he's easy to see.
Yes.
But he sees her, and that's absolutely beautiful. And you also deal with a character, who has disability, right?
Yes. He's losing his hearing, so he's almost completely deaf at the point, and he has a hearing aid, and he's lost hearing in one ear, so he's transitioning to becoming completely deaf, and the way he deals with it is he's accepted it. He's taking steps. He's learning sign language now. His daughter is also, so they can help each other. And he's very he says at one point, Nora asks him, "Why aren't you bitter? You know, you're the one who was injured here." Um, and and he says something like, "Some people are able to carry things more easily than others." He's just a rock solid guy. You know, he's not a martyr, he's not a victim, he's just going on with his life.
Yeah, this is life and you go on. And I think that happens with a lot of your heroes. You know, Levi being one of the just so stoic. I think if I had one word for your heroes, they're just so stoic.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, and I think that's a very, like, when you say, you know, I want a man, you want someone who can carry burdens, share burdens, protect you if you need protecting, like the way Sully is with his daughter is so beautiful, and who can resist a single dad of a teenage girl, especially when they love each other so much.
Who's not messing it up.
Right, yeah, he's doing such a great job. You know, he takes care of things, you know, and she really sees that.
Yeah, and without being a jerk about it, right? He doesn't take himself too seriously, and I think we were talking about this yesterday too, because one of the themes in the book is fear, and fear and anger. And he has so much of the two of them. He actually has more to be angry about, almost, and more. But the therapy aspect that I was talking about, right? It's almost like you're given challenges, and how you look at them. Perspective is everything, right? He doesn't see them as challenges, or even if they are challenges, they're just not. You know, they just are, and that's so the fear never stymies him.
Right.
And with with Nora, there's a little bit of being stuck in the place where you got hurt.
Right.
And he's moved way on, and everybody else is like, why are you not stuck in this place where you got hurt?
Right. And you know, it's interesting because Nora has been through some really big events, and her fear doesn't really come from that one particular scene in chapter 10, which she has to survive. You know, her life is at stake, and she does, and she's very brave about that. You know, she deals with it head on. She sees a therapist. She does what you're supposed to do. But she finds that it's kind of leaching the color from her life, and she talks about this grayness that's descended on her after this event, and yet she doesn't let it stop her. She goes back to work. She's still doing all the right things, and she realizes, you know, there's something I have to push through, and so often the place to do that is home.
And I think that the real thing she needs to get past is at home.
Yes, it's not
kicks her
right.
into gear.
It's that not traumatic, but the misery of her adolescence. You know, she was just, and again, like, you write what you know. That horrible. No, of course not. No, you glided through like a swan. But yeah, that feeling so uncomfortable in your body, in your clothes, in your peer group, you know, that's really what she has to get past, and really own the person that she's made, and kind of reconcile those two halves of herself.
Yeah, and Dad.
And her father.
Yeah, that's the big wound. But this is also, and I'll get back to questions because they're pouring in. But I did want to talk about so there is, your books are not violent, or you kind of I think this is the most violent of your books, which makes it sound like it's it's a different book than it is. No, it's extremely funny and heartwarming and all of that. But in terms of how far you go with violence, so was that like, did you struggle with that at all?
That was a really difficult scene to write. So what happens is that there's a home invasion, and Nora survives it, but not without being hurt. And there's this whole, it's actually the scene where she, to me, is the strongest, because here she is incredibly vulnerable. No one is going to come save her. and she's thinking about her lizard brain and what lizard brain is telling her to do, that elemental instinctive voice that tells you when you're in danger and what you need to do to get out of it, and she does. But writing that scene was a balance between letting the reader know what went on without being too graphic and grim, and yet having it be terrifying, and yet also letting the reader know, by the time you read that, she's survived it. So.
Yeah, and it is terrifying, and in terms of writing, it's also brilliant because the foreshadowing. The first time you see the man with the dog, I mean, you just know. It's just like, So your lizard brain is in sync with her lizard brain a little bit, and it's just done so brilliantly.
Thank you.
And without being graphic. I mean, my heart was pounding when I read that scene.
It probably took me about 3 or 4 days to write that one scene.
It is absolutely terrifying, and I will use the term lizard brain forever. So, okay, we're gonna step back and talk about your Blue Heron series a little bit, because I know we're getting questions about that, but that gives me a chance to talk about your process a little bit, because I think that in terms of plotting, the Levi and Faith story had a little bit more complicated plotting with what all is going on and the things that he goes back and fixes, and
Yes.
so what is your process like? Was that your most complicated book to plot? Or?
No, it wasn't. That's The Best Man, and so it's the story of Faith Holland, who is jilted at the altar when her fiancé comes out as gay, and spurred on by the best man, who is Levi, who has always known that Jeremy is gay, even though Jeremy hasn't admitted it to himself. And then years later, Faith comes back to this little town in New York, and she and Levi find themselves face to face a lot, and she has a lot of irritability with him. He's never really liked her, and all this stuff, and she rubs him the wrong way. So of course it's one of those kind of stories. But I love I love books where the character's past has brought them to this moment, and when you're really able to understand the character and see why he is the way he is, why she is, all the roads that brought them here. So that part, I often start with the idea. So, a woman left at the altar because her fiancé comes out, and then I develop the characters who would make that possible and not farcical. So my process is kind of come up with that idea, and then think about the characters, and then go back and see how I can really make it so believable that this would happen to this person, and only this other person is the right one for him or her.
Yeah, which is code for you go back and you make them as miserable as you can possibly make them. Destroy
Torture.
them.
Listen, I'm talking to Sonali Dev. She's not innocent in this regard.
It's torture. Yeah, we love to torture our
We do,
characters.
yes. Rock on, sister.
So there's we have a question from Leslie, who's on authorsvoice.net. Hi, Leslie. In the Blue Heron series, why does Prue's husband never speak?
Oh, Prudence is the sister of the older sister of 3 of the characters in the Blue Heron series, and she's rediscovering her sexuality after menopause, and I just thought that Carl would be a lot funnier off screen if it was all coming from Prue, and I think it worked really well.
Works really well. Yes, because I mean, your imagination is such a tool, such a tool as a reader. It's just fabulous sometimes. All right, everybody's saying we love the book, love the book.
Thank you.
Someone wants to know if you want to go to France, but we'll move on.
Yes, please.
Have you ever stayed on a houseboat? That's from Lynn Latimer, and she's on Facebook. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. No, Nora lives on a Facebook for the summer. I'm sorry. She doesn't live on Facebook.
That's
Most
us.
of us do.
Yeah.
We do. She lives on a houseboat for the summer. Now that you mention it, no, I've never been on one, but boy, do I want to now, especially that one.
That would have been research.
I know.
mean, that
I
that would
figure
have been
it out.
great. I can help
Retro
you with
research.
that research if you ever need
Okay.
help with it. So, Chelsea wants to know, she loves all your books, of course. How much research do your books require?
Oh gosh, a lot. I research all my books, sometimes for more than a month. This one I researched a lot about fear, about houseboats, about auditory processing disorder and deafness after a brain injury, which is what Sully has. And I read a lot, of course, but I really love to talk to people in those experiences. So I was assisted by a gastroenterologist and a person, my husband's coworker, a firefighter, Corey Kelly, who has auditory processing disorder and also two beautiful children, and she lets me babysit them. And she told me about how you hear with this kind of thing, what you don't hear, it was fascinating. I researched what it takes to get into Tufts. There's really nothing in my books that I don't examine. I try to make as factual as possible. So if I say this happened in the Boston Common near the frogs, I have been there myself or I've Google Earthed it, so I know exactly where it is and what I'm talking about.
That's awesome. This is not going to be a good segue into my next question because we're going to talk about sex.
Oh, yay.
And about mediocre sex.
Ah.
So two things. One thing that you do is you actually close the door.
Yes.
So you don't write graphic sex scenes, but your books have the chemistry is through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
So to be able to do that, it's without
reason-
body parts and without actual
Yes.
actions, and it's like to make the heart beat and to make the heartgasms happen. How does that happen?
Love that.
Isn't
Can
that
I
the
steal
great
that?
word? Yes.
Orgasms. The reason that I don't write graphic love scenes, sex scenes, I'm really bad at it. That's pretty much the reason. I did try back in the olden days when I first started writing. My children were little, and I would write in their playroom, surrounded by their toys. Bert and Ernie watching me type the word nipple, and I just like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So I love the lead up to that moment, and then I give the characters their privacy and often visit them in the afterglow. But what's wonderful about that is that I get a lot of reader mail saying, I loved your book. I gave it to my teenage daughter. I gave it to my mother. And it was nice that we could all share that book. There are authors who can write really, we were talking about this too, really emotional love scenes, which you do so well, and Huntley Fitzpatrick does so well, where you're really in it for the emotions, and the body parts are happening too, but it's really all about the feelings. So I do prefer to write the closed door sex scene. Now go on, bring it. The mediocre sex.
Mediocre sex. So Nora and Sally, the first time that it happens, it's meh.
It's not. Well, again, I had to research this because my husband, he's got this covered. I have to say this in case he's watching. I don't know what that's like, so I had to research it. So yeah, the first time they get together, they've had a terrible first date, right, or second date. They want to bring the relationship to the next level, but the night has been disastrous, but they're like, we're here, his daughter's not there, we're going to do this. And it's just as awkward as can be, like they bump noses, they practically chip a tooth, it just, and I love that because, again, I write very realistic novels, and not everything is this, the explosion, the stars, I saw the face of God moment. Sometimes it's just like, oh, so that actually wasn't as great as we were hoping, was it? No. So, but it doesn't stop them, which is nice.
And I think it's very metaphorical too, because you're dealing with fear through the whole thing, right? And starting out a new relationship after having had sucky past relationships, it's almost like it's going to be something you're afraid of, you know, that first
for
time.
both of them. You know, they've both, he's divorced, and there is this tentative sense of like, we don't want to get this wrong so much that we can't get it right. But they do consummate, damn it.
Yes, and then afterwards,
through force of sheer will.
Afterwards, medals are handed out. So I love that you say that. Okay, I'm told we're out of time. And I think I have all of your questions. Thanks so much for being here. I do have one question to take us out. Okay. You have to tell me what porno music is.
Porno music. Sonali doesn't know what porno music is. It's got a lot of saxophone in it. It's basically bum chicka bum bum. That's,
it might
you know,
be old world porno, because I don't think new porno has that.
Do you have like strings and piano music in your porno music?
I don't think that my porno has music.
There's a lot of bass involved.
I don't think there's that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, the music is all vocal cord created. Any last words? Anything you've read? Recommendations?
Oh yes. Well, I've just reread Sonali's A Distant Heart, and it's the kind of she did, but it's really the last book that I finished, and it's just such an emotional tour de force. So read Sonali's book, and a book that's coming out soon is The Bittersweet Bride by Vanessa Riley, which is a gorgeous story that I'm really enjoying. And I got to get an arc for that. And just thank you for having me, and thank you for all your kind words about the book.
Thank you for writing it. So the book we've been talking about is Now That You Mention It by Kristan Higgins from HQN Books, $15.99. I feel like I'm on QVC, I'm sorry.
This could be yours.
And it says here, anything special about the book? The whole darn book is so special.
Well, you know what? It's winter. It's snowy and slushy in a lot of places. And this book is set on a beautiful island in the summer on the coast of Maine. So little mental vacation for you.
Yeah, and one of the questions I wanted to get to was sense of place, which again, Kristan does, I think, like nobody else. We couldn't get to it, but reading the book is getting to it. And I am going to let you go with upcoming shows. Up next is Solved. That's January 10th, which is today, so in half hour, which is why we have to get off the air. And that's with Sujata Massey. Her latest book, The Windows of Malabar Hill, which is amazingly in Mumbai, where I grew up, so I can't wait to read it. Berta's Books is next, and that's January 18th at 2 p.m. with Elizabeth Berg's latest, The Story of Arthur Trulove. And then we have Lit with Love on January 24th at 5:30 p.m. With me and my book, A Distant Heart, and Meredith Durant will be talking to me about my book. Thank you so much for being here. Again, order books and come back and see us again. Bye-bye. Thank you.